I'm not yet proud of what I've written. I think there is a lot of good insight, but it's not structured in a way that makes any sense yet. And so first, one of the things I want to say is that the goal of a document is not to drive live conversation, because documents are kind of points in time. And so if you're trying to do that, kind of the strategy document is the wrong vehicle. Another thing that I want to try to get to is that strategy documents can actually serve many purposes, but when you don't clarify which purpose you're serving, it becomes very crazy. But basically, when you're trying to do too much all within a single thing, it becomes very unfocused. And so what we want to do is we want to pick a specific focus. And so the specific focus is that we're sharing information out to executives so that they can intervene if they choose to do so. And then the other thing I want to say is that product strategy documents are really not meant for other product managers. I know that in some product organizations, PMs will send each other kind of these strategy docs or specs or what have you. But many times that is not actually the most effective use of time, because it's much more effective to simply speak to another PM, to schedule time on the calendar. If you're specifically trying to talk through things like, how do we make sure that we coordinate on a particular problem? Or how do I make sure that my features don't break your features? Taking the time to craft some sort of strategy document and then to broadcast it out to every PM in the product group is not super helpful, because many times whatever it is that you're building, or whatever it is that you're deciding on, does not actually require every PM to weigh in. And so I see sometimes product strategy documents get misused, where the goal is to show to other product managers you're being thoughtful. And that becomes like a signaling thing. It becomes I am demonstrating that I am smart enough or talented enough to be part of this group. And that's honestly not what companies should be indexing for. Companies should be indexing for what is the value that we're going to create. And people should trust that their fellow product managers are smart. Like, we should not need to perform these kind of, we shouldn't come up with these performance pieces just to kind of hone people's thoughts or to kind of see how other PMs think. You can get that through like informal conversations with PMs, or you can pull them together into a meeting to talk through something live. You do not need to take all of this time to come up with a product strategy document. So there's that. I think maybe the other thing I need to talk about is expectations for product strategy docs. Very likely take you X hours, not very likely less. And so somewhere, I haven't decided where yet, I need to talk through why we need to be careful about who we're positioning the strategy doc for, because it does take a lot of time. I have written many of these, and they can easily eat up an entire week, sometimes 2 weeks, and you only have so many weeks in a year to work. So if you're just forever writing strategy documents, you are not moving the ball forward in terms of better understanding your customer, better understanding the value prop, better understanding how to strengthen distribution, better understanding the product portfolio. Like you're missing out on all of these different things that you could be doing instead. So we don't want to write strategy docs just to show people that we're smart. People should assume that we're smart because we're product managers. Rather, the goal should be to drive some action. And what is the action we want to drive? The action that we want to drive is we want to get executives to buy in to what it is that we're doing. Or if they don't buy in, to give them the opportunity to intervene. Like that is the goal of the strategy doc. Is to get either silent approval or to get intervention. So that's what we're trying to get to. Yeah, so basically what I want to do is I want us to have empathy for our executives. Many times we do not know what their work looks like. We don't necessarily know what challenges they face. And so by making it really clear what are the things that they need to account for, what are the constraints that they're working with, that then reminds us that we shouldn't ask them to overengage in terms of, hey, I need you to work with me kind of all the way from start to finish. They just don't have the time for that. And then otherwise, if I'm not going to bring them in from start to finish, then I'm never going to bring them in at all. If they didn't ask me, I'm not going to tell them. And it's not that. It's, hey, they don't have the time to proactively ask you. So you need to push information to them. Or else they're going to wonder, why did you do that thing? I saw that there were problems from a mile away. I could have intervened and done something about it and set the company up for success. But now that this thing is live in production, or now that we are committed to a strategy that I disagree with, this is causing XYZ problems. And so we can avoid kind of both modes of failure by proactively pushing information out to them when we have kind of a key decision to make. Yeah, I think potentially I need to collapse these three sections together because they all kind of flow into the same thing, right? We're saying the purpose of this strategy document is to solve executive pain. And so maybe I can collapse these things together. I am not sure yet. But again, kind of, we just want to get our ideas onto paper. I think another thing to call out is I am trying not to rely on bullet points because we are now past the outline stage. Like we have an outline, and kind of when you write bullets, one of the things that I personally run into as a problem is you see the bullet and you think, oh, well, okay, this means all of this information. And because it means all of this information, I am in a good spot. I'm going to like write out all of these bullets, and then having this like more in-depth bullets concludes my first draft. And that's honestly not a good idea because then you may find that certain bullets, when you actually turn them into sentences, they overlap with each other, or they conflict with each other, or you are trying to cover too much information, or these things don't map up together. And so that's why the thing you do after outlining is actually writing, and you try to write full sentences wherever you can. You don't want to write sentence fragments, you don't want to write more bullet points, because then you give yourself the false sense of, I have a much more fleshed out argument when you don't. And so that's why I am struggling through getting sentences onto the page, even if they're not perfect. As long as they're there, I can then start to see where are the pieces that don't really map up. And so as an example, one of the things that you saw is that I was trying at first to say, hey, product strategy documents are used for lots of different stuff. And you really shouldn't use it for all of these different things. You should instead use it for XYZ. Then another thing I came up with is, well, it helps for us to even just think about what's the point of a document, right? Like, why not a meeting? But then when I put that up at the front, that didn't make any logical sense. And so then I saw, oh, okay, well, actually, I can move it below here to say, I'm a single specific purpose for a doc, and then what's the point of a doc? And then this flows better together. But if I just wrote a bunch of bullets here, if I just wrote a bunch of bullets here rather than sentences, I would not have seen the logical flow there. I would not have seen the conflicts. I would not have seen kind of the jumps in logic. And so that's why kind of writing out your thoughts as sentences is so important. There's a difference between bullets versus lists. And so Here, this is a list of things that people use product strategy documents for. I do not expect to flesh these out into further sentences. And so it is okay that I have bullets here. Similarly, this is a list, and so that is also okay. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to have something that looks like this, of like product strategy doc needs singular purpose, space, constrained, need to pick, docs don't work live, therefore async. What should you do for live stuff instead? Right, if I just do this, I have not made actual progress in terms of getting my ideas across the finish line. And so that's why I instead need to have full sentences to see kind of where are the places that don't make sense, so that I can always go back and fix those. Okay, so we are making some sort of progress here. Again, kind of, I see that there are a lot of good thoughts. The thoughts aren't in the right structure. They don't flow together all that well, and that's okay. We're just trying to get as much as we can down onto the paper, so that way you could see me struggle through it. I think one of the things that people kind of assume is, hey, Clement, I really like reading your articles, or I love listening to your presentations because you are so structured. But they assume, or I think that there's an implicit assumption that, oh, well, Clement just always thinks in a really structured manner. That's not true. I am a human being with messy thoughts. And so the reason why it looks so structured and why it looks so effortless is because I actually put in a lot of effort into, let's get all these ideas down on paper. Let's evaluate them and see, assuming that I, the reader, I am not the writer, I cannot assume anything that the reader knows, right? I have to assume that they do not know what argument I was trying to make. I have to assume that they don't have my experiences. I have to assume that they are struggling with some other problem at work, that they may not be in this industry, that they may not have this experience. And so by forcing myself to read like a naive reader, and when I say naive reader, I don't mean someone who is gullible. I mean someone who does not yet have the context. I have to assume a naive reader, so that way I make sure that I structure my stuff in a way that is very easy to consume. But it does not come out easily. Editing honestly takes a good number of hours. So we are not going to end the stream with a polished output. This is more for you to see, after I've already gotten through the ideation phase, because you've seen me do that a couple of times in my previous streams. Now the goal is to see what does it actually look like in terms of putting information down. And so again, kind of, it's okay to stream of consciousness stuff out from your bullets, right? So I have these bullets, I am turning them into sentences. The sentences are not amazing, but we can't let this be the final output. I see too frequently that people will just post up something that they just kind of wrote onto the page, kind of without additional editing and structuring. And so what I want us to do is I want us to take a look at how I am, yes, turning ideas into content, but then actually refining the content, actually putting it together in a way that is polished, makes sense, is easy to consume. So we will get there as I struggle through this. It honestly is, you have heard me use the word struggle a couple of times. It really is, because kind of you need to take yourself out of your own mindset of, well, of course I already know all of this stuff, because yeah, you're the author, you're the writer, you're the presenter. You need to take yourself out of that mindset and inherit someone else's mindset of, I actually do not know kind of what it is that they think, what it is that they believe, etc. And so kind of shifting in between those two different mindsets takes effort and requires us to leverage critical thinking and empathy. And so that's why kind of it does take significant mental effort to do.